My sister-in-law mocked my son's allergy. Then she secretly tested him with peanut butter. So I took the recording to court and watched her lose everything. I never thought the person I trusted to watch my child would be the one who nearly killed him to prove a point. My name is Amanda, and I'm 34 years old. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd be sitting in a courtroom watching my sister-in-law plead guilty to child endangerment, I would have laughed at the absurdity of it. But life has a way of throwing curveballs that completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. I work as an elementary school teacher at Riverside Elementary, where I've been for the past 8 years. It's one of those jobs that people either love or hate. There's no middle ground when you're dealing with 25 third graders every day. I happen to love it. There's something magical about watching a child's face light up when they finally understand a concept they've been struggling with, or seeing them gain confidence as they master reading or math. My colleagues often joke that I have endless patience, which probably comes from years of dealing with my own son's medical challenges. Lucas is 6 years old now, and he's the center of my universe. He's got these bright green eyes that sparkle when he laughs, messy brown hair that never wants to stay combed, and a gap-toothed grin that melts my heart every single day. He loves dinosaurs, building with Legos, and asking approximately 1,000,000 questions about how everything in the world works. He's curious, intelligent, and funny in that way that only kids can be. He also has a severe peanut allergy that could kill him within minutes if he's exposed to even trace amounts. People don't really understand what severe food allergy means until they see it in action. It's not like lactose intolerance where you might get an upset stomach. It's not like a mild sensitivity where you might break out in a few hives. When Lucas comes into contact with peanuts, his entire immune system goes into overdrive, treating the protein like it's a deadly toxin. His throat swells shut, his blood pressure drops, and his airways close. Without immediate medical intervention, he can die. I carry EpiPens everywhere. In my purse, my car, my classroom, Lucas's backpack, even in a little pouch I keep in my pocket when we go to the grocery store. I read every food label twice, sometimes 3 times, checking for obvious peanut ingredients, and the dreaded may contain peanuts warning. I'm that mom who sends detailed, typed lists to every babysitter, teacher, and family member about what Lucas can and cannot eat. I call restaurants ahead of time to discuss preparation methods. I inspect Halloween candy with the thoroughness of a forensic scientist. And yes, I know exactly how that looks to other people. I know they think I'm neurotic, overprotective, one of those helicopter parents who can't let their kid breathe without supervision. I've heard the whispered comments at birthday parties when I unpack Lucas's special snacks. I've seen the eye rolls when I ask to speak with the kitchen staff at restaurants. I've felt the judgment when I politely decline playdates if I'm not sure about the food safety situation. But here's what those people don't see. They don't see the nightmares I still have about watching my 18-month-old baby turn blue and stop breathing after accidentally getting into some trail mix at a friend's house. They weren't there when I held his tiny body in the ambulance while paramedics worked frantically to keep him alive. They didn't spend 3 sleepless days in the pediatric ICU, watching monitors and praying that my child would make it through the night. That experience changed everything for me. It wasn't theoretical anymore. It was visceral, terrifying proof that my son's allergy wasn't something to take lightly or hope he'd grow out of. It was a constant, lurking threat that required vigilance, preparation, and yes, what other people might consider extreme caution. My sister-in-law Monica has always thought I was being dramatic about it. Monica is 37, 3 years older than me, and she's the type of person who has strong opinions about absolutely everything, especially when it comes to other people's parenting choices. She works as a health consultant for a wellness company, which makes what eventually happened even more unbelievable and infuriating, and she's married to my husband's brother David. They've been together for 12 years, and in all that time, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with Monica where she didn't find some way to criticize or question someone's life choices. She's one of those people who believes that modern parents are too soft, too careful, too willing to accommodate their children's needs instead of making them toughen up. At every family gathering, she'd make these little comments that felt like tiny needles under my skin. "Kids these days are so coddled," she'd say while watching me check ingredient labels. "Back in our day, nobody had all these allergies and special requirements. When I'd politely explain that Lucas's allergy was genuinely life-threatening, she'd give me this patronizing smile, the kind that made me feel like she was humoring a child, and say something like, well, maybe if you exposed him to more things naturally, his immune system would be stronger. The implications behind her words were clear. She thought I was manufacturing a problem where none existed. She thought I was one of those anxious mothers who projected their own fears onto their children, creating medical issues out of thin air. In her mind, allergies were probably psychosomatic, caused by overprotective parenting rather than legitimate immune system dysfunction. What made it even worse was that the rest of my husband's family seemed to agree with her, or at least they didn't contradict her when she made these comments. They'd exchange glances when I'd unpack Lucas's special snacks at birthday parties, or when I'd ask to read ingredient lists before letting him eat anything. My mother-in-law would sigh and say things like, "Amanda, honey, don't you think you're being a little overprotective?" My father-in-law would make jokes about how delicate kids were these days compared to his generation. Even my husband Mark, who should have been my strongest ally, would sometimes tell me to relax when I'd get anxious about food situations. He'd seen Lucas's reaction as a baby. He knew how serious it was, but the constant pressure from his family to treat me like I was overreacting seemed to wear him down over time. He'd never directly contradict me in front of Lucas, but I could feel his embarrassment when his relatives would make their little comments about my excessive precautions. It was isolating and exhausting, constantly feeling like I had to justify my son's medical needs to people who should have been supporting us. I started to second-guess myself sometimes, wondering if maybe I was being too careful, too anxious, too controlling. Maybe other parents of allergic children were more relaxed about it. Maybe I was letting my own trauma from that first reaction color my judgment. But then I'd remember how it felt to watch Lucas struggle to breathe, and I'd push those doubts away. I wasn't going to risk my child's life to make other people more comfortable with my parenting choices. The irony was that Monica had an 8-year-old daughter named Emma, who was absolutely wonderful. Emma was this sweet, empathetic kid who adored Lucas and treated him like the little brother she never had. Despite her mother's attitude, Emma understood Lucas's allergy better than most adults in our family. She'd help me check ingredients when we were cooking together, and she'd always make sure to wash her hands thoroughly if she'd eaten anything with nuts before playing with him. She'd even started reading labels on her own snacks to make sure they were safe to have around Lucas. It broke my heart that this young child had more awareness and compassion about my son's medical condition than her own mother, who was supposed to be a healthcare professional. Emma would ask thoughtful questions about why certain foods were dangerous for Lucas, and she'd remember details about cross-contamination and emergency procedures that adults in our family consistently dismissed or forgot. Watching Emma's natural protectiveness toward Lucas made Monica's skepticism even more painful. Here was proof that children could understand and respect food allergies without becoming fearful or anxious about them. Emma managed to be both careful and relaxed around Lucas, which was exactly the balance I hoped other adults could achieve. 3 months ago, everything changed on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of teaching my 3rd grade class our weekly science lesson about plant life cycles when my principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, knocked on the classroom door. She had that serious expression that immediately put me on edge, the kind of look that meant something important was happening and my day was about to get complicated. "Miss Johnson, could you step outside for a moment?" she asked quietly. I asked my students to continue reading their chapter while I stepped into the hallway, my mind already racing through possibilities. Was there a problem with one of my students? Had something happened to Lucas at his after-school program? Was there some kind of emergency at the school? "Amanda, I'm sorry to interrupt your class, but we have an emergency faculty meeting that can't wait," Mrs. Rodriguez explained. "There's been a serious incident at Jefferson Elementary involving student safety protocols, and the district is requiring all schools to review our procedures immediately. I need all teachers to stay after school today for at least 2 hours, possibly longer." My heart sank. I glanced at my watch. It was already 2:30, which meant I had less than an hour before I needed to pick up Lucas from his after-school program. My usual babysitter, Mrs. Chen, had called in sick that morning with some kind of stomach bug, and Mark was out of town on a business trip that wouldn't end until Thursday. I was mentally scrambling through my limited list of emergency childcare options when my phone buzzed with a text message. I pulled it out discreetly, expecting it to be a reminder about some appointment or obligation I'd forgotten about. Instead, it was from Monica, which was unusual. We rarely texted each other directly unless it was about family gatherings or logistics for holiday planning. Heard through Mom that you needed help with Lucas today. Emma and I are free this afternoon. We can watch him. Heard through Mom you needed help with Lucas today. Emma and I are free this afternoon. We can watch him. I stared at the message feeling conflicted. On one hand, I was desperate for help. On the other hand, Monica's attitude about Lucas's allergy had always made me nervous. But she was family, she was a healthcare professional, and Emma would be there too. How dangerous could a few hours be? I picked Lucas up from his after-school program and drove him over to Monica's house. As we walked to the door, I went over the rules with him one more time. Remember, buddy, what do we always do before we eat anything? Ask if it has nuts, and only eat things from my special bag, Lucas recited dutifully. That's right. And if anyone offers you something that's not from your bag, I say no thank you and tell them about my allergy. Perfect. You're such a smart boy. Monica answered the door with Emma bouncing excitedly behind her. Lucas, want to see my new art supplies? Hi, Aunt Monica, Lucas said politely. Thank you for watching me today. Of course, sweetie. We're going to have so much fun. I handed Monica Lucas's backpack, which contained his EpiPens, inhaler, and a selection of safe snacks. Everything he needs is in here. There's a list taped to the inside pocket with emergency numbers and... Amanda. Monica's voice had that edge it got when she thought I was being excessive. I've got this. He'll be fine. I know. I just want to make sure you have everything. The EpiPens are in the front pocket, and if he has any reaction at all, any swelling, trouble breathing, hives, anything, you use them immediately and call 911. Don't wait to see if it gets worse. I'm a health consultant, Amanda. I know what anaphylaxis looks like. Right, of course. And about food, he can't have nuts. I know, we've been through this 100 times. I knelt down to hug Lucas goodbye, whispering in his ear, remember our rules, okay? I love you so much. Love you too, Mommy. See you in a little bit. As I walked back to my car, I had this nagging feeling in my stomach. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Monica had seemed more irritated than usual, and there was something in her expression when she'd said, I know what anaphylaxis looks like, that made me uncomfortable. But I was already running late for the meeting, and I told myself I was just being anxious like always. The faculty meeting dragged on longer than expected. We were discussing new safety protocols after an incident at another school in the district, and everyone had opinions about implementation. I kept checking my phone, but there were no messages from Monica. That was good, right? No news was good news. At exactly 5:47 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Monica's number, but when I answered, it wasn't Monica's voice I heard. Amanda? Amanda, please come quick. It was Emma, and she was sobbing. My blood turned to ice. Emma, what's wrong? Where's your mom? She's trying to help Lucas, but he looks really sick and I don't know what to do. And Emma, honey, slow down. What's wrong with Lucas? He's all purple and he can't breathe good. And Mommy gave him the pen thing, but he's not getting better. And I was already running to my car. Emma, listen to me very carefully. Is your mom there? Yes, she's with Lucas, but she's crying and saying she doesn't understand. Tell her to call 911 right now. Right now, Emma. Can you do that? Okay. Amanda, I'm scared. I know, sweetie. I'm coming right now. Tell your mom to call the ambulance. I hung up and immediately called 911 myself while speeding toward Monica's house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The operator said ambulances were already en route. Monica had finally called. But they gave me instructions to relay just in case. The 15-minute drive felt like hours. I kept calling Monica's number, but it went straight to voicemail. All I could think about was Emma's voice saying Lucas was purple and couldn't breathe. Those were the exact words the doctor had used to describe what would happen if Lucas ever had a severe reaction without immediate treatment. I pulled into Monica's driveway just as the ambulance was arriving. I ran into the house and found Lucas on the living room couch, conscious but clearly struggling. His lips had a bluish tint, his breathing was labored, and there were hives spreading across his neck and face. Monica was sitting next to him, tears streaming down her face, holding an empty EpiPen. What happened? I demanded, dropping to my knees next to Lucas. Baby, Mommy's here. You're going to be okay. I don't understand, Monica kept repeating. I don't understand how this happened. The paramedics took over, asking rapid-fire questions while they worked. Had he been given epinephrine? Yes. When? About 10 minutes ago? What had he been exposed to? That's when Monica's story started falling apart. I don't know. We were just having snacks and suddenly he started coughing and then, what snacks? The paramedic asked while checking Lucas's vitals. Just some crackers and, I checked everything. What exactly did he eat? I pressed. Monica, what did you give him? Nothing with nuts, I swear, Amanda, nothing with nuts. But as they prepared to transport Lucas to the hospital, I noticed something that made my heart stop. On the coffee table, partially hidden under some papers, was a nearly empty jar of peanut butter and a knife with residue on it. Next to it were crackers with what looked like peanut butter spread on them. Monica. My voice was deadly quiet. What is that? She followed my gaze and went completely white. That's not... Emma was making herself a snack earlier, that's all. Earlier when? Before you got here. Way before. The paramedics were ready to leave. I climbed into the ambulance with Lucas, holding his hand as they worked to stabilize him. He was conscious and his breathing was improving, but I could see the fear in his 6-year-old eyes. Mommy, I told her about my allergy, he whispered. I told her I couldn't eat those crackers. What crackers, baby? The ones with the brown stuff. I said they looked like peanut butter and I couldn't have them, but she said it was just cookie butter and it was safe. My vision went red. Cookie butter. There's no such thing as nut-free cookie butter. Every brand contains peanuts or tree nuts. Monica knew this. As a health consultant, she absolutely knew this. At the hospital, Lucas was given additional epinephrine and steroids. The doctor said we'd caught it just in time. A few more minutes and his airway could have closed completely. As I sat beside his bed in the emergency room, watching my little boy sleep with an oxygen mask over his face, I felt a rage building inside me that I'd never experienced before. Monica arrived at the hospital an hour later with Emma and David. She'd obviously been crying, and she immediately started apologizing. Amanda, I'm so sorry. I don't know how this happened. I was so careful I checked everything. You gave him peanut butter crackers. No, I didn't. It was cookie butter. I thought it was safe. Monica, there's no such thing as nut-free cookie butter. You know that. You work in health consulting. You know that. David stepped forward. Amanda, Monica would never intentionally, wouldn't she? I turned to face my sister-in-law. You've been telling me for years that I'm overprotective. That Lucas's allergy isn't as serious as I think it is. That I'm being dramatic. That's not... I never said I didn't believe. You said kids today are coddled. You said if I exposed him to more things, his immune system would be stronger. You think I'm a paranoid mother who's making up problems. I never said that exactly. So you decided to test it. The words hung in the air between us. Monica's face went through several expressions: shock, fear, and then a kind of defensive anger I recognized. That's insane, Amanda. I would never put Lucas in danger intentionally. I love that little boy. Then explain the peanut butter. Explain how a health consultant accidentally gives a child with a known severe peanut allergy something that obviously contains peanuts. I made a mistake. I'm human, I make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Monica. This was you deciding that you knew better than his doctors. Better than me. Better than 6 years of managing a life-threatening condition. Emma had been standing quietly beside her mother, but suddenly she spoke up in a small voice. Mommy, should I tell them about the recording? Everything stopped. What recording? I asked. Emma looked scared but determined. My English learning app was on. It records everything so I can practice pronunciation later. It's been recording since this afternoon. Monica's face went completely white. Emma, that's not... Can I hear it? I asked gently. Emma nodded and pulled out her tablet. She navigated to the app and found the recording from that afternoon. My hands were shaking as I took the device. The first few minutes were normal. Emma and Lucas playing, Monica making snacks in the kitchen, but then I heard Monica's voice, talking to Emma while Lucas was apparently in the bathroom. Mommy wants to see if the little boy really has the allergy or if his mom is just being dramatic like I think she is. Emma's voice. But Amanda said he can't have nuts. That's because his mom is scared of everything. A little bit of peanut butter won't hurt him. If he really has the allergy, we'll just use the medicine pen, but I bet he'll be fine. But what if he gets sick? Then we'll know it's real. But I think his mom just worries too much and makes him think he's sicker than he is. Emma, should we tell him it has peanuts? No, let's just see what happens. Sometimes kids think they're allergic to things because their parents tell them they are, but their bodies are actually fine. The recording continued with Lucas coming back into the room. I could hear Monica offering him the crackers, him asking if they were safe, her assuring him they were cookie butter and perfectly fine for him to eat. I looked up at Monica, who was now crying again, but these weren't tears of remorse. These were tears of someone who'd been caught and was scared of the consequences. You experimented on my child. Amanda, please, let me explain. You used my 6-year-old son as a test subject to prove your theory that I'm an overprotective mother. I really thought he'd be fine. I thought you were exaggerating the severity. You thought wrong. And you almost killed him because of your arrogance. David was staring at his wife in horror. Monica, tell me this isn't what it sounds like. I never meant for him to get that sick. I thought maybe he'd get a little rash or something, and then we'd know for sure, but I never thought. You never thought what? That anaphylaxis was real? That doctors know what they're talking about? That a mother might actually understand her own child's medical condition? By this time, Lucas was awake and listening. His eyes were wide with confusion and hurt. Aunt Monica, you knew it had peanuts? Monica couldn't even look at him. Lucas, I'm so sorry, I made a terrible mistake. It wasn't a mistake, I said firmly. It was a choice. You chose to risk my son's life to satisfy your own curiosity. I pulled out my phone and did something I should have done the moment I heard that recording. I called the police. I need to report child endangerment, I said when the operator answered. Someone intentionally gave my child an allergen that nearly killed him. Monica started panicking. Amanda, please don't do this. I'm family. I made a mistake, but I'm family. Family doesn't experiment on children. Family doesn't risk a child's life to prove a point. The next few hours were a blur of police interviews, hospital paperwork, and phone calls. I sent a copy of the recording to Mark, who immediately booked the next flight home. I also sent it to my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and every other family member who had ever made me feel like I was being overprotective about Lucas's allergy. The responses came quickly. Mark called me, crying and apologizing for ever doubting me. My mother-in-law called, horrified and full of remorse for the times she'd questioned my caution. Even my father-in-law, who rarely showed emotion, left a voicemail saying he was sorry and that they'd all failed to support me properly. But the most important response came from Lucas himself. As we were finally heading home from the hospital the next morning, he looked up at me and said, "Mommy, you were right. My allergy is really serious, isn't it?" "Yes, baby, it is. That's why we have all our rules. And you're not being mean when you check my food and carry my medicine?" "No, sweetie, I'm being careful because I love you. I love you too, Mommy. And I'm sorry I ate the crackers when you taught me not to." "You're not in trouble, Lucas. You trusted an adult who told you something was safe. That's what kids are supposed to do. This isn't your fault. Is it Aunt Monica's fault?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. Aunt Monica made a very bad choice. She knew better, but she chose to ignore what she knew. And because of that, you got very sick. Is she in trouble? Yes, baby. She is. And she was. The police investigation led to charges of child endangerment. Monica's employer launched their own investigation after learning that one of their health consultants had deliberately exposed a child to a known allergen. She was suspended pending the outcome of both investigations. More importantly to me, Child Protective Services got involved. While they determined that Emma wasn't in immediate danger, they required Monica to undergo parenting classes and psychological evaluation before Emma could return to her full-time care. In the meantime, Emma was staying with her grandparents. The family dynamics shifted completely. Monica and David's marriage was strained beyond repair. David had been horrified to learn what his wife had done, and he supported every consequence she faced. The rest of the family, who had spent years minimizing my concerns, now went out of their way to show support and understanding. But the most important change was in how I felt about myself as a mother. For years I'd been made to feel like I was neurotic, overprotective, and paranoid. I'd second-guessed myself constantly, wondering if maybe I was being too careful, too anxious, too controlling. Not anymore. 3 months later, Monica pled guilty to reckless endangerment and received probation, community service, and a permanent restraining order that prohibited her from being alone with Lucas. She lost her job and had to find work in a different field. Her marriage to David ended in divorce. Emma, thankfully, was doing well with her grandparents and in therapy to help her process what had happened. She still asked to see Lucas sometimes, and we arranged supervised visits because I didn't want to punish her for her mother's actions. During one of these visits, she told me she was sorry for not stopping her mom, and I assured her that what happened wasn't her responsibility. The criminal case made local news, which led to some interesting consequences. I was contacted by several other parents who had experienced similar situations with family members who didn't take their children's allergies seriously. Some of them had been convinced by relatives to test their children's allergies in unsafe ways. Hearing their stories made me realize how common this problem really is. I also received an unexpected call from my old pediatrician, Dr. Martinez, who had been Lucas's doctor when he was younger. She'd heard about the case and wanted to tell me something. "Amanda, I want you to know that you've always been one of the most informed and appropriately cautious parents I've worked with. Lucas's allergy is severe. Your management has been exemplary, and you should never doubt yourself about that." Thank you, Dr. Martinez. It's been hard sometimes, feeling like everyone thinks I'm overreacting. You know, in 15 years of practice, I've seen more children harmed by adults who underestimated allergies than by parents who were overprotective. Your vigilance has kept Lucas safe all these years. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about that. Those words meant more to me than she probably realized. For the first time in years, I felt completely confident in my choices as Lucas's mother. Now, almost a year later, Lucas is thriving. He's more aware of his allergy and more confident in advocating for himself. He knows that when adults tell him something is safe, he still needs to check with me first. He understands that his allergy is serious, and that the rules we have aren't punishments. They're protection. Mark and I have grown closer through this experience. He's become my strongest advocate and Lucas's fiercest protector. He carries EpiPens now, too, and he's the one who reads ingredient labels when I'm not around. He apologizes regularly for the times he told me to relax about Lucas's allergy, and while I've forgiven him, I think the guilt motivates him to be even more careful now. The extended family has also completely changed their approach. My mother-in-law now keeps a fully stocked allergen-free pantry for when we visit. My father-in-law reads labels more carefully than I do. They've all taken first aid courses that include anaphylaxis training. But most importantly, I've learned to trust myself completely. I don't second-guess my instincts anymore. I don't apologize for being careful. I don't feel guilty for protecting my child in ways that might seem excessive to others. Last week, at Lucas's 7th birthday party, another parent commented on how intense I was about food safety. Instead of feeling defensive, I just smiled and said, "Yes, I am. My son's life depends on it." Because that's the truth. My son's life does depend on my vigilance, my caution, and my willingness to be seen as that mom who makes a big deal about allergies. Monica's experiment proved that better than any doctor's explanation ever could. I've learned that protecting your child is never being dramatic. It's never overreacting. It's never making a big deal out of nothing. Sometimes it's literally the difference between life and death, and I'll never apologize for that again. As I tucked Lucas into bed tonight, he asked me, "Mommy, will you always keep me safe from my allergy?" "I'll always do everything I can to keep you safe, baby. That's my job as your mom, even if other people think you're being too careful. Especially then." He smiled and closed his eyes, completely trusting that his mother would keep him safe. And for the first time in years, I felt completely confident that I would. Because sometimes, being too careful is exactly careful enough.